Hi everyone, and welcome to the Agile Manufacturing Series. Excited to be here today with a few of our customers. I love sitting down with them, and this is as much in our current times as we can do, but they have some super interesting stories for you today on how they're taking their digital transformations forward. We've got three different panelists, each at different stages in their journey. Heather, who's been using Tulip for a year. We've got Ting Feng, who has deployed Tulip across many different SMEs and has lots of insights. I'm particularly interested to hear about some of his fish processing experiences. And finally, Wolfgang, who works for a life sciences business, who are just at that very early stages of moving forward with Tulip. We're going to cover three topics of conversation today. So identifying use cases. So how do you really get started in deploying Tulip and getting going forward? Hopefully lots of tips and tricks on how to really get started well. And then once you have those tools embedded, how can you get the most out of them? And I think some really interesting leverages about how they're using their data to get their most out of and drive the performance in their operation and see areas to improve. And also, how do you get ROI? Where are they seeing the impact? How are they thinking about impact and ROI coming from Tulip? So I think some really interesting discussion topics, hopefully that will excite you. And then at the end, time for questions and answers from our panelists. So please submit on the right-hand side in the chat questions as we go along. We'll pick them together. We'll be collating them and we'll answer them at the end. Also on the community, there's some discussion going on, I can see already. So happy for you to chat there and add questions there as well. We'll be picking it all up. Looking forward to it. So maybe we'll go through a quick introduction of our panelists. So first, Heather from Magic Trail. Hi, Heather. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, and thanks for having me today. So my name is Heather Wagner, and I'm currently the Human Resources Manager for Magic Tilt Trailers. And Magic Tilt Trailers is a custom manufacturer of boat trailers. We are a high mix, high volume company. So process is critical for us to be efficient in all aspects of business. So through my current role of head of HR, I've also been recognized as a leader in process improvement and change management. And in 2019, the company put forth an initiative to improve process, which has led me to our relationship with Tulip. So we've been with Tulip for over a year now, and we're going fast and furious. So I'm excited to share my experiences with you today on our relationship with Tulip and the digital platform.
Awesome. Excited to have you here and hear more about your journey today, Heather. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the panel, we have Wolfgang. He's from Laderel, also based in Europe like myself. So hi, Wolfgang. How are you today?
Yeah, hi, yeah, I'm fine. Thanks. No, I'm also very excited to be part of this panel discussion. You know, I'm Wolfgang Dorn, working for Laderel Medical, being the director of digitalization for supply chain and manufacturing. And so basically, you know, Laderel is providing healthcare solutions to hospitals and to healthcare providers, and we are expert in CPR, which is cardiopulmonary recovery, and we have an ambition. We want to save 1 million more lives by 2030 each year. So how are we going to do this basically? So for us, it's super critical, of course, as for other companies, is of course quality, and we, as well as Heather's companies, we are high mix low volume company, and so we have many different assembly lines. So and this kind of brought us also to Tulip, because we started an initiative in 2019 which we called the Digital Factory. And so we're already, let's say, all the facilities are quite familiar with lean, but let's say going the next step, embracing Industry 4.0, this was the big question for us. And yeah, that's why I'm happy to share my very short-term experiences from the last 2 months.
Excellent. Thanks, Wolfgang. It's great to have you here. I think that perspective that you'll have from the first 2 months will be very much appreciated, and I think will be great to hear how you're getting started and how you're getting things off the ground. So, thanks for joining us today. Next, we have Ting Feng Yi from McKinsey. He's from Singapore, and I think has been working across multiple SMEs. And Ting Feng, hi, nice to have you here today, and appreciate you staying up late at night to share some of the experiences that you've been having with Tulip in Asia.
Sure. Maybe I'll give a quick introduction of myself as well as the project that I have been working on. Right. So I'm Ting Feng. I'm a engagement manager from McKinsey. For the past 1 year, we have been engaged by the Singapore government to help local SMBs in their digital transformation journey. So as part of the project, each company will go through a 6 weeks pilot phase with my team, right? And one of the solutions that we are using right now is Tulip. So for the past 1 year, we have deployed this across about 25 companies. And as you can imagine, when you hit 25 companies, the range of industries varies significantly, right? So I've served from food manufacturing company like fish processing. As you can imagine, it's going to be super high mix, right? So and the volatility is very high as well, because you won't know, what's the fish that they are going to get every day, right? The next one is also a cake manufacturing company. So that's on food processing side. So I have also dealt with medical devices assembly. More recently, so for the production of ventilators in the COVID situation. The last and there are other industries, right? I mean, happy to answer any questions that anyone has. Hopefully, there are some industries that I can share some of the experience with. But also includes, like, for example, MRO companies who are doing, aircraft maintenance, right? So these are some of the companies that we have served, and through Tulip, we are able to show the ROI quite quickly, right? So part of the program, we have to show at least a 10% productivity improvement, and we were able to, achieve that quite consistently across the 25 companies that we have dealt with so far.
Excellent. Thanks, Ting Feng. That's cool. Very cool. So we're going to start by where we start. So what use cases, where are we going to use Tulip? And Wolfgang, I think you're early in your journey. I think you hopefully have a initial perspective of this. So I'm going to put you on the spot and put you first. Please, how are you thinking about identifying and selecting your first use cases that you're using with Tulip?
Yeah, yes, of course. I'm happy to share this with you. So basically, my first reflection would be start with the problem in mind. Don't try to introduce a certain fancy technology which is part of this Industry 4.0. So start with the problem in mind. And this is what we did. But before we started discussing specific use cases, or before we started into selecting a platform like Tulip, we looked at Industry 4.0 and the offering, and then we thought, okay, how can we Lerdahl benefit from this topic of agile manufacturing or Industry 4.0? So I mentioned this before, we are a high mix, low volume company. So this makes, so we have a lot of complex assembly content, and so, and I have to say, all the facilities are already quite familiar with lean concepts.
Yeah.
But lean has its limitations in the aspect of, lean is not solving your problems in the sense of manual processes, Excel processes. So you have a lot of support processes around manufacturing. For example, we have manual testing checklists. So we have a lot of these paper stuff, which of course many other companies probably have too. So we were actually looking for something to enrich lean, and then we identified Tulip. And then basically we realized that we can digitize our paper-driven processes. We can create real-time visibility. We can enrich our testing. So all this basically leaded us then to our use cases. And then it was very simple. Basically, we just picked one of our most complex assembly lines in Texas, and additionally some assembly lines in Monterey, and we started, and that's it. So
yeah. Very good. Thanks, Wolfgang. That's very, very good to hear. Maybe Heather, do you have anything to add about maybe how you got started? But I know you've been now using Tulip for a year and getting a lot of value out of it from what I hear. How have you taken those first use cases and also turned them into what additions, what changes have you made as they've been deployed?
Sure. So, like Wolfgang said, we aren't a lean manufacturer. We're very much an old school manufacturing. We're very manual, very hands-on, and a lot of paper. And so for us, anything was, a great place to start. And what we did is we looked the same thing as Wolfgang, kind of looked to see, where are we missing the mark the most, and let's kind of put in some process. So that's kind of where we identified and where we started. And truthfully, we're kind of working backwards from where Wolfgang started. We're working from the digital side to try to get things more digitized. And then I think we'll move into the lean aspect. So we're kind of doing things backwards, but we needed to basically streamline processes first, and get a grasp and handle on that before we can even implement a lean culture into our organization.
Cool. Awesome.
So excited. But to answer your question about changes to the current current apps that we have, Tulip's wonderful at listening to the customer, taking their feedback, and then basically rolling out what we're asking for. So with that being said, we have now since moved most of our apps to a mobile device. Whereas when we first started with Tulip, we had tablets, we had barcode scanners, we had all the things that we thought we would need. And then when they developed this, what this has allowed us to do is move everything to a mobile layout, use cellular Wi-Fi devices. Not only is it portable, I think a little bit easier. Most of our employees understand how to use a mobile device. So the training curve has been a lot easier. But I mean, ultimately, we've changed over from barcode to QR code, which has been a nice integration that Tulip's offered. And we've been able to save money on the back end, not having to supply tablets and barcode scanners. So just one device. So that's been really fantastic.
Awesome. It's really nice to hear. I think, and I hear from a lot of other customers as well, this idea of how using Tulip fits in with some of the lean foundational principles that they have, looking at waste and improving waste. And Heather, you talk about your improvements using digital to improve your business processes and take waste out of those processes as well. But then also, Heather, how you're iterating and seeing new features that are coming from Tulip and then putting those into your process to make things even more streamlined. And this agile, we talk about this agile way of iterating and improving. I think you'll probably never be satisfied with what you have, but you just keep iterating and improving it.
That's great.
Yeah. Cool. Ting Feng, maybe can you share a bit of a broader context on across a few of the SME cases that you have, about what tips and tricks would you give to people? What recommendations would you have for people trying to identify their use cases?
Yep. So based on what I've seen across multiple companies, especially when we first start the discussion with the companies on what are some of the use cases, what we've seen that didn't work that well for some companies was they start with a Christmas list, right, of pain points. So a lot of companies, basically, they took a piece of paper and they passed it to various departments, and they try to fill it the wish list from every department and try to address them, right?
Yeah.
In the most, I would say, cost effective way. Basically, they try to find a solution that can address all the pain points. I think that's one of the, I would say, symptoms that we see that people tend not to do very well. I think the second one is people are too aspirational, right? So I have seen CEOs telling me that Ting Feng, we shouldn't be talking about I 4.0, we should be talking about I 8.0, right? That's where, you know, the leaders are, right? I don't want to spend the time, and then when the rest of the crowd are in 8.0, I'm in 4.0, right? I mean, having the aspiration is good, but let's be also practical on starting at a pilot area, right? And taking baby steps to bring the organization across. Because I mean, digital transformation, being the leader, you can be the one that is at 8.0, but if the rest of the organization is at 2.0, then you are still not moving any faster than the rest of the crowd. Eddie, you have anything to add?
I think that's great. So sort of sharing that, saying that taking the steps, like there's lots that can be done at a base level to get improvements. We don't have to be looking at too fancier solutions. You're suggesting. Correct.
Yeah. So I think what are some of the good, I would say, practices that I've seen. I think number one, in terms of the use case, is being really specific, right? On what are the things that you want to address. I've seen problem statement like, I want to improve traceability in the shop floor, right? So first, it's very hard to track what do you mean by improve traceability, right? So being very hard to measure, you also can't benchmark what success look like to you, and there is no end to the iteration of the apps, right? So people like Eddie will go crazy. I mean, that's for sure. I think the second thing is a lot of the users try to cramp too many use case in one app. So for example, the maintenance people wants, okay, I want to track the maintenance regime inside the app. Then the operations teams want to track something else. Quality teams want to track more and more use cases inside the app, right? So I always tell the clients, right? So let's start with one, and get the operators to learn how to use it properly, and then you can build on more and more use cases on the app itself. It might be two separate apps, right? So for two separate crowds per se, right? But let's just start with one and not try to create a little monster, and then after that the transformation journey will be, I would say, a little bit problematic.
Yeah. Awesome. I think that this idea of we're not just built digitizing for the fun of digitizing and here's my Christmas list, but as you say, don't forget the core problem solving, identify your problem that you want to solve well, work through that problem and use the digitization, use the tools to help you solve that problem better than you could before, but not just building shiny, gold-plated, very fancy things just for the sake of it. If that's kind of what I understand from what you're saying. Yeah.
Correct.
Excellent. Thanks, Ting Feng. Heather, Wolfgang, I don't know whether that relates to you, what Ting Feng's saying, or whether there's any other sort of steers you'd have on that to people.
Wolfgang, do you want to go? So for me, for our company, I think I'm in line with Ting Feng. You can have a huge list, right? And so you just determine, I think Tulip, the great thing about Tulip, and my recommendation is start small, because it will branch out naturally and organically. And I think that when we first came into Tulip, the owner wanted quality. I mean, it was all about quality. It's one thing that the customers were complaining about. And so that was like the immediate fire at that moment. So we said, where can we identify probably, where can we get the best return on investment on this? And so we hit quality. And from there, though, now it's branched out all over. So I would just say pick something small, start there, start something where it's easily able to measure. And then, like I said, organically, your tree branches are going to grow out naturally.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks.
I could just add to this. I fully agree to Heather, and that basically start small, fail fast, and this is of course possible with Tulip. This is the nice stuff, and we are also facing we are focusing on quality, because if you think in lean, so and the Toyota guys it's the mantra of Toyota: focus on quality and efficiency will follow by magic, that's why I think starting with quality is the best recommendation you can have, and it shows it will pay off very, fast.
Yeah.
Tulip wise.
Very good advice, guys. Thanks very much. We're going to move on to the next sort of discussion topic, which was around how do you actually leverage these digital tools? How do you get the most out of them? And the question we're going to split into sort of two phases. One is test a bit with Wolfgang how you're building the capabilities to actually use the platform and build the apps and enable your teams to use Tulip and other platforms, but also then thinking a bit broader about expanding applications and rolling it out and using the data that's then gathered from those applications that you have. So looking sort of the whole journey of using Tulip. So Wolfgang, maybe are you able to share some more of your experiences on how you're setting up, how you're enabling your teams to start using Tulip and start getting the most and building the apps and getting the most out of the platform?
Yes, I'm happy to share this. So basically, this was the reasons why we selected Tulip was basically this offer that we ourselves can digitize processes. This no-code app editing capability. This was the main selection point, and I think we looked at 10 different systems, and then at the end we said, well, the others, they have shiny offering, but in reality, we don't need shiny offering. This kind of do-it-yourself approach, like you drive to IKEA and then you buy the cupboard and you build yourself the cupboard, and it's so easy that you can build a cupboard. And this was so fascinating for us. That's why this is kind of the empowerment. And then we started. We just started back in August. Start to learn this and so on. And we started in 3 factories with a very few people and manufacturing engineering. And then the Tulip University basically enabled us to building apps. So what Heather mentioned to me last time. So it's basically you don't need to be the IT super long-term programmer. You just do this and then you build apps, and it's fascinating. So basically what we realized is that so we have this then on the ground since basically mid-August, and we already see a good payoff, very positive in very few weeks, and we have been concentrating on quality and what we can see, and I think this is 3 elements which makes it so attractive and successful. The first thing is that we got real-time feedback within a week, quality-wise, productivity-wise, and the quality feedback comes from the shop floor people, and they are so enthusiastic that they now can kind of influence. So this was the first element, which makes it so successful. The second element of empowerment is this, what I just mentioned, is basically it's the manufacturing engineering team who can kind of digitize any process. This was not possible before. So if we would have needed before to change a process, then we would have needed to talk to our ERP system, maybe figure out what we can do, long-term change, a lot of money, and not really giving us what we wanted. And number 3 is basically connecting the manufacturing engineering team to the shop floor people. This kind of created a new team spirit, which we were not imagining. And we get like our manufacturing engineering teams, they say they get basically daily feedback, how to improve the app, how to improve the process. So what Tulip is showing on a PowerPoint, this is basically materializing as we speak. And so it's more than I expected, and I don't want to kind of to be over enthusiastic after 8 weeks, but I'm sorry I am,
Thanks, Wolfgang. I love hearing about the empowerment as well that you explain. I think that's what drives us here at Tulip, drives a lot of us to be doing what we're doing, is building a platform that can create that empowerment both at the operator level and the process engineer level. So to hear a customer talk about actually seeing that in their operations, I think will give a lot of we'll take that back and share that with a lot of the team, and it will give a lot of excitement to us. So thanks very much, Wolfgang. Maybe just to move on from that initial rollout to actually starting to ramp up and do more and go broader with the applications, and Ting Feng, I'm hoping you can share a little, like you've seen, what did you say, 25 different deployments of Tulip. It would be great to hear what are you seeing as important for making those deployments like successful, and maybe some war stories of when it hasn't gone so well as well, potentially.
Okay, right. So I think maybe what's the question? The question disappeared. Okay, in terms of what the ramp up looks like, and what is it important for organization to consider, I think the first one is the communication, right? From the top team to the operators, right? So what I've seen, especially, I'm not sure if Wolfgang and Heather, you all face similar things on your shop floor, but when a lot of the companies start to deploy Tulip solutions for the operators, the first reaction that they get is actually quite negative, right? They think that they are being so-called supervised. They think that they are being watched, and they think that this is a sort of like a tracking device. So people are very, I would say, afraid when it comes to a first time using a digital solution, right? And this is more for SMBs who have, just started on their digitization journey. And typically, that's what we sense from the shop floor. What actually companies that do really well, I think number one is the CEO being very transparent and being very clear on the direction why they want to do this, right? So with the good buy-in from the top, clear communication, this actually ease off any of such concerns or worries from the operators, and therefore they will start to then adopt the use of such solutions. For companies that I realized didn't do that well, they leave the communication right to the supervisor, and this could be maybe because of language barriers and stuff like that. Then it's very hard for operators to use it properly, and that's when the numbers or the data that's collected seems very clunky or problematic for us to actually do any meaningful analysis out of it, right? I think the second point, when in terms of ramping up, right, I think it's very related to what I shared just now. It's not waiting for the perfect product. So typically when we start to launch Tulip, we work with the managers and we work with the engineers. And you will realize that by being the engineers and the managers, you have different point of view than the real person that is going to use the shop floor application, right? Yeah. So I always tell them, it's good, right? We should, as managers, let's come up with the broad idea, but let's get the operators involved in the actually even in the design phase, right? So that they feel committed to the product or the app that they have co-developed, and then that's where they start to be more engaged and start to use it on a regular basis. That's where we see, I would say, higher success rate of getting operators to use applications on the shop floor.
Yeah, excellent, thank you. Heather, Wolfgang, I don't know if you have anything to add to Ting Feng, or Heather, maybe based on your sort of, you've spent the most time now rolling out now and getting them across the operation.
So I would agree that we definitely have seen some hiccups. Now, I've had mixed feelings from the user end. One of them, it's so funny because the same person will give me two different feedbacks, which is funny. So one app, they said, this is fantastic. This saves me time. And on the flip side, they're like, this is going to take too much time to do. It's going to take away from production. So I don't know necessarily where that came from. I thought that was kind of an interesting mix of feedback. I mean, but ultimately, I think that Ting Feng is correct. I mean, one, you have to have the CEO buy-in for sure. That definitely helps. The second thing also is having the user feedback and input. It kind of goes along with the engagement side of it, right? So if you can get them engaged and feel like they are contributing to the overall betterment of the process, I think you have a much better chance of success rate. We have a very diverse culture within our company, multi-languages, multi-ethnicities. And so finding, and I've explained to them that we can even translate it on the back end so that they can easily understand it. A little more work on the builder side of it, but I think it's worth it in the end because ultimately we want them to use it, right? So I would say the same thing. I would say definitely go to your end user. It's great to get management's input, for like the final goal, what you're looking to accomplish, but to get the users to participate and how it's built out is really going to be a win for a company.
I actually have one of the customers I'm working with. Have actually, some of their app builders are actually operators that they've promoted and trained in using Tulip. So they've actually brought them like into the project team that's actually building the applications, which I thought was really, really neat for like making sure the products that were being built or the apps that were being built were going to be fit for purpose. We're going to work for the operators. So I think it's pretty cool. Wolfgang, I know you're maybe not there yet, but you have a lot of existing systems within your operation as well. So would like you to share a little bit about how you're thinking about and when and how and the sort of data maybe that will be connecting Tulip to and pulling and pushing into other systems and into Tulip.
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting and important topic at the end to not have an isolated Tulip solution in your factory and in your operations, but then finally to connect it to your system landscape. And actually one of the reasons why we selected Tulip was, we were kind of unsatisfied with the MES capability of our existing ERP system, the manufacturing execution system capability. I was screening a bit what Gartner was saying to this, and interesting wise, let's be fair to our ERP system. Most of the big ERP systems are lacking a bit the granularity on the ground, and one of these MES system supply, he had a nice analogy. Analogy. He said to me, Wolfgang, this is like your ERP system gives you the insight in your manufacturing like on a golf course. So you hit the ball and then, okay, you don't see the ball for some time, and then all of a sudden it plops down on the other side of the ground. And this is the granularity you get with your ERP system, and he's right. So basically, we are talking here about a blind spot, and to this blind spot was kind of irritating us. And of course, you try to fix the blind spot by manual processes. Of course, we have classical, like in automotive, we have our shop floor management boards. We note our work progress and so on, and people come to the morning meeting with paper and so on. So basically, this kind of blind spot, how we can close this. And then we realized that with Tulip we will be able to close the blind spot, and by connecting, of course, Tulip in a later stage also to the rest of our IT landscape, which is we have an MDM system. Of course, we need to connect this to the ERP system and to Salesforce and so on. And so this will be very critical going forward. We haven't gone there yet because at the moment we are building these applications, but of course we know that to leverage the full get the full benefit out of this connectivity, we need to connect the systems, which will be our next step.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Wolfgang. And maybe Heather, like you don't. You have this data that you've been collecting now for a year, and it'd be great to hear how you're using that in your day-to-day production, and also to identify improvements that you're then moving forward with. So how are you using the data that you're gathering with Tulip?
Yeah. So we review data. It's all different based on what we're collecting. And in some cases, we're just gathering data so we can look at it later. And that's the great thing, is it's stored and we can always revisit. But we typically look at some of the data daily. Some of it's more monthly. Frequencies are different. We have all different types of users looking at the data. We have, the CEO will look at the data. We have our outside sales reps will actually look at the data, and right down to our logistics and supervisors. So we have different levels, but mainly, the data that we started collecting that we found in at least our industry that has proved itself very valuable are the photos. And so we photo document all phases of our build on trailers. And what we found is it's really saved us a lot of money. It's helped us, resolve warranty claims. It's helped us identify where, for example, we had one dealer that reached out to us and swore he was missing a trailer, said, you guys did not ship us this trailer, we don't have this trailer. So we were able to pull up the documentation that we had taken through Tulip, and we were able to physically count each trailer that was on that load that went out. And we came back and we sent the picture directly to the dealer, and we said, this is what we sent you. So if you're missing a trailer, I would suggest calling the police and reporting it stolen. And how quickly he went, he's like, I'm going to go check again. And sure enough, they found the missing trailer. And in past, pre-Tulip, we would have just literally had to take their word for it and said, okay, well, we'll build you a new trailer and we'll ship it to you. And that would cost us thousands of dollars and time, right? So, the data has been proven very helpful. We talk about return on investment, and for us, being so manual, and not having systems to capture this data, we've spent thousands of dollars, not being able to prove one way or another if we've done something correctly or incorrectly. So the data for us has proved very valuable. We're using it from a purchasing standpoint. So our purchasing manager reviews the data and has been able to make, more accurate purchasing decisions, minimizing waste. So, I mean, it's been a cost savings all the way around. We are thrilled with what we are currently collecting. And the great thing about Tulip is it's endless. Like, you can collect whatever you want to collect, whether it's time trials, whether it's, materials, whether it's inventory. I know Wolfgang spoke about ERP systems a little bit, and we kind of joked around yesterday that, I could love to replace our current ERP system with Tulip. Because it's so diverse and versatile.
Yeah, exciting. It's great to hear that the data's getting, like, you're using it, it's giving you value. Was there anything, like, do you start to see improvements that you want to make to applications based on the data as well? And,
absolutely.
And what sort of example, do you have any examples that you've recently implemented?
Yeah, so it's some of the feedback that we've received from the user, right? We talk about what data we're gathering. Some of the data we find is actually not useful to us at all. What we thought would be useful is not, and so we remove it and kind of make the process easier for the end user. But in many cases, we had, for example, and I didn't realize this in the process, but the employees, the users were coming back to me saying, hey, if we add this, we can get more communication across to other areas, so we're not getting so many questions back. And I said, I didn't even think about that. And I said, this is great. So, we were able to take the data that we were sending, and we've added, they said, let's take a picture of this and send it with it, because then they can cross-reference. So, we've literally, and that's coming from all areas of the business. We're getting feedback and can you do this? And can we do this? And I'm like, I don't know. Let me check. And usually it's something that we can absolutely do. So, the data that we've collected is really valuable. Even the current data, we look at, for example, the photos, and we're like, you know what, we don't like this angle. We have to think bigger. We have to add another area for documentation. So we are able to go through all of that and rake through the data and look at what we want and what we don't want and what's working and what we could add. So
cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Heather, it sounds like you're having a lot of impact from using Tulip. I think this segues nicely to the next section, where we'll talk a little bit about the impact that you're seeing, and also Ting-Feng, you've been seeing with the customers or the clients you've been working with. So maybe Ting-Feng, you could start by sharing what your experience has been so far in terms of finding ROI, what types of ROI, what sizes of ROI you're seeing.
The mute and unmute. Yep. So I think based on my experience, typically we like I mentioned, if you are laser sharp on the problem statement, having a clear idea of what are the parameters or what are the data you want to collect. Typically, we find that after collecting 1 week of good data, we can start to analyze the data and find out what are the interventions that we can put in place to improve, let's say, productivity or the processes of the respective companies, right? So in terms of ROI, I think across the 25 companies, what we've seen is the ROI is typically less than a year in terms of the payback period, and we were able to quickly see the results. At least in 6 weeks, we are able to identify where are the processes or where are the steps or activities that is creating bottlenecks in the plants, or which are some of the steps that are less productive, right, as compared to the others. So I think with this, with the data and with some clear comparison, we were able to, I would say, laser focus on the targeted interventions to be deployed very quickly on the shop floor, right?
Yep.
So I think on my experience, in summary, 1 week to gather data, 2 weeks or 1 week to analyze, 2 more weeks to develop interventions, and in summary, I would say less than 1 year of ROI, typically across the 25 companies that we have seen so far.
Yeah, cool. That's exciting to hear. Maybe Heather, what are your experiences on collecting or gathering, creating impact, or the ROI that you're seeing? What area? Maybe you've got something to add to Ting Feng
Sure.
in terms of the areas you've been seeing it.
I mean, honestly, if I were to be 100% transparent, at least from our company standpoint, the return on investment is immediate, right? So when you have a company that does everything manual, no robotics, everything's done by hand, everything's done kind of old school paper. When you think about digitizing, your current processes, the return on investment is instantaneous because you're already removing time. You're removing time from somebody who has to organize that paperwork, collect the data, file the data. However, some companies do it. I mean, we have been up till more recently, a company that puts everything in Excel, and then someone has to manage that. With Tulip, when you digitize a process, again, you take away that step, right? So you're already adding back into the company, and that person can spend their time doing something else. So we found instant return on investment, instant. And then we continue, as I've mentioned before, it organically grows throughout the company.
Yeah.
So that just kind of, you start taking away processes or removing processes, and it kind of filters out through the whole entire company. We currently are using Tulip in 4 locations, and each location has organically grown throughout just starting the initial, let's take the most basic process that's manual right now and let's improve it by digitizing it. And it's saved so much time across the company that we can then refocus on adding more apps and creating and looking at more processes. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Sounds good. And maybe back to Ting Feng, what are you seeing sort of with the SMEs that you're working with? What's the sort of typical ROI numbers that you're seeing or impact that you're seeing, and what are the real use cases that you say are there use cases that are really the impact drivers for you that you see now for time and time again, or is it quite broad what you're seeing?
So I think the fact that I served quite a fair bit of industries, the typical use cases that I've seen are on labor productivity. That's number one. Standardization of work. That's quite related to labor, but it's really improving the quality. The third one is tracking the quality that comes out from each process steps. That's the third use case. The fourth one was quite interesting. That was on reducing the amount of waiting time, because across the respective process steps, there was no like a proper Kanban system that it tells the next step that they have already finished the production, right? So the amount of waiting time actually was huge, and they actually had one guy whose day job was to just walk around to see if the process has been done, and then push the materials to the other stations, right? The last one was quite a unique case where we used Tulip to gather data, and we actually, I would say, leverage on additional applications like Python and stuff like that to generate correlation analysis to identify, what are the parameters that leads to quality defects in the particular plant itself, right? So these are some of the use cases that I've seen, more on the labor as well as the quality side. But like I also shared, there are also other use cases that companies can potentially explore through the use of Tulip, right? And maybe even some add-ons would also be possible as well.
Yeah, I think that's like very common with what we see, like these quality productivity use cases. And I think the last one you mentioned, Tingfeng, is super interesting in terms of the ability to collect data with the Tulip applications, with connections to machines in Tulip, to augment many different data streams very quickly is something I see as very powerful. And as you say, maybe using some other like analytics processes to actually do some sort of correlation statistics and correlations like Python, like marrying that together, I think can be very powerful. It's really interesting. I don't know, Wolfgang, Heather, anything finally to add on ROI? I don't know, Wolfgang, you're very early in the process, but maybe you do have something that you're seeing already where you're seeing the impact.
Yeah, yes, absolutely, and maybe I will start a little bit earlier. 15 years back, I was working in automotive, and we created a new factory, and we applied, let's say, stuff which today we call Industry 4.0. I didn't even know that we were applying Industry 4.0 15 years back. So we had like automatic barcode scanning of boxes from suppliers. We had pick-to-light systems, we had digital work instructions, we had a vision system, etc. This we did this for one product family, and this was delivered to BMW in just in sequence. And basically, it was huge money. We called a system supplier who helped us in building this factory. And of course, it was very nice. And the factory even won a prize. It became best manufacturing plant of the year 2006 in Germany. But transferring this to where I'm working today, to Leerdal, where we have hundreds of product families and lots of different applications and lines and so on, this would have been just impossible from a financial perspective. So from that perception now, Tulip's kind of lowering the entrance barrier to all this nice stuff, which is all the IoT stuff and is this automatic digitizing processes. So purely by this, I can immediately see ROI coming for us, and of course we already have ROI. Like Heather said, you get immediately ROI by, because now we are taking pictures of our failures in the early stage. For example, we have a molding process in Mexico, and we mold silicone skins, which are then put on our mannequins, and then they are delivered to Texas. And in Texas, we kind of then rejected these, and then we had to ship them back and so on. And then just by this, just by on-time feedback, so the Mexican colleagues create a skin, take a picture, it's visible for the quality guy on the other side in Texas. He can immediately give quality feedback, so there's no back and forth. This basically happened in a week, and we were all super fascinated by this. Another element is kind of, now we will be able to check our routings, so before we took, we measured 1 or twice a year, and then we updated this in our ERP system, and then basically we measured productivity against this. But now, of course, if you then apply Tulip line by line, then you will have online routings and so on. So the ROI options are massive, and is going into productivity, quality, etc. So I think I'm not afraid of finding ROI in the very near future.
Okay, Awesome. That's exciting to hear that early on you're starting to see the options, and I think that's a really interesting comparison to sort of your previous work, Wolfgang, and I think that's like the accessibility of the technology and of the platform is what we're trying to enable. And as you say, being able, brings us back to some of the earlier comments about enablement and being able to have process engineers digitize their own processes. So it's really exciting. We're going to move on to the questions, and I think the first one I'm going to tackle is like builds a bit on what we were just talking about. So it's a question from Cheryl Hillman in the chat, and she's asking about what percentage of paper are we seeing still being used in manufacturing? And I mean, from my experience, there are very few manufacturing facilities that have no paper at all. Like there's still a lot of paper in manufacturing, and there are many organizations that rely on it fully. I don't know if anyone has a perspective other than that or can collaborate with me, but I haven't done any research other than having been to maybe 50 manufacturing facilities.
Yeah, I've done no research on, how many other companies are, how much paper they're using. I just know that for our company specifically, we want to move away from that, right? Because it's just time consuming and storage. And I mean, there's multiple reasons. And honestly, stuff gets lost, things get spilled on paper, and all of a sudden you don't have the data that you need. So for us, definitely digitizing everything is a direction that we're heading in.
Cool.
And of course, you have to remember, when did the discussion start that we will have a paperless office and the paperless factory and so on? I think this started like 20 years back, when we first got the personal computer. Then we said, oh, okay, this is now we are entering the paperless office or working environment, and well, we're still not there.
Yeah. I'm going to move. I think the next question is from Diana, which fits a bit with the paperless office. So this is asking here about who is going to be building the applications. Do you have dedicated people, and maybe what's your end state? Do you see all your process engineers, for example, having the skill set to build apps, or who is going to be building apps? I don't know. And maybe Heather, you might want to start.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I currently am the sole builder of our app. So as the head of HR and the only HR, also being in charge of process, it's definitely, I don't want to say challenging because I mean, I have my day-to-day activities. However, what's nice about Tulip is it's so easy to use that somebody like Wolfgang said that doesn't have an IT background can actually build out these apps. So our goal is not for Heather to be the sole builder of these Tulip apps. What I would like to do is get to a point where I am also designating app builders on the mid-management level, only because I think it's super important. They're really close to the employees on the floor. They're close to the process. I think it would make sense that they have the ability to do that. And I feel confident with the ease of building out apps that Tulip's created, that I'll have no problem training someone else to be able to successfully build these.
Yeah. And Wolfgang, do you have a perspective how you're thinking about it in your organization?
Yes, what we saw is at the beginning we started with a larger group, but then we realized it probably makes more sense to select within the team, let's say per factory, let's say maybe 2, maximum 3 manufacturing engineers, and then concentrating on this, because basically the more you create the apps, the better you get. And of course, the wish list gets more complex. At the beginning, you start with the let's do a work instruction app, and let's do a quality feedback app and so on. But we are currently creating or digitizing a process where there's no standard Tulip app yet in the library, so it will be probably hopefully soon provided by us. And this is basically the shipping process, and of course you can scan and so on, but then it's connecting it to our ERP system, and then you need a bit of more logic. So I would say my recommendation is don't try to that everybody starts learning this, because this is then it's not focusing. If you select per plant or per factory 2-3 persons, or if you then go further to other departments where they have a lot of demand, then select one specialist, and this specialist should then do this. And I'm not saying that it's complicated. So I'm not saying that the opposite of what Heather is saying, but kind of stay focused, and then you can speed up basically your capability of building these apps.
Yeah, and maybe there's another question specifically to you, Wolfgang, around the dynamic between the IT organization and these app developers, or the manufacturing engineers that are developing the apps. How is that dynamic? How's that relationship, and how are you managing that?
I think the interesting thing about this is that at the beginning we didn't need the IT department, and this was fascinating for them, kind of, because they were saying, okay, do you need any help? And then we said, no, we're fine, we're good at the moment, so we don't need you. Of course, we will now need them, to be honest, when we start connecting our Tulip to our ERP system, and we already started the discussion. And this is easy from the Tulip's side, because Tulip has such a nice modern architecture. So when our now we have one person who's basically he's Mr. Connection. I call him Mr. Spider-Man. So he's connecting all our IT systems in the company. Then I let him look at Tulip, and then he said, "Hey Wolfgang, this looks nice." So this is easy from that perception. It's not so easy from our ERP system perspective, because the architecture is kind of from the 80s, and then they're trying to step up and to provide something like APIs and connectors and so on. So to make a long story short, building the apps, you don't need the IT department. Connecting the apps, you need the IT department, and this kind of this dynamic starts now, and but I'm confident that we're gonna solve this, because then we leverage we get the leverage out of the full connectivity.
Yeah, awesome. I think we see that a lot with our customers, that they start building applications, but really the connectors need setting up once, and it's someone more experienced in technology that needs to do that, and it's something you can do centrally. And often they're spreading, like starting small, maybe with a team dedicated as they're learning and building some standards and figuring it out, but really the end goal being to have it as broad as possible. And like you would write your SOP in Word or as a PDF, the default becomes to write the SOP or the work instruction in Tulip is how often many of our customers are thinking. The next question here was about I think the connection. There was a connection to how can the data that's being collected, is it just being collected through the app, or can you also connect Tulip to other systems like SQL, XLS, text files? I can answer that one. This is a little bit more technical, but yes, like if you're building a Tulip application to collect data, you can have it as like a manual data entry form to enter text, to enter photos. You could also have it connect to an external SQL database to show the data from that. It could also be from machines, tools, devices. So you have a very wide range of data that you can connect and pull into Tulip.
And also,
sorry.
No. I was just going to say, and what the question was, if you can display real-time data through the app, and I would say absolutely. I can actually pull up a table and watch the data hit the table as they are entering it.
Yeah, and turn that into a dashboard if you wanted to as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is for sure super nice. So in the meantime, our CEO, he has the dashboard. He wanted this, and now he can see in real time what's happening in Mexico in this moment on the shop floor in the cell X, and this is kind of wow,
Yeah.
So we are very excited about this.
Very powerful. So 1:30. We need to wrap up the conversation. So I think there's maybe a few unanswered questions, and we will get to those we can put them in the chat, put them in the follow-up. Thank you ever so much, everybody, for your time. I appreciate sharing your story, being very open about the work that you're doing with Tulip. Any final comments? Otherwise, we'll leave it there and move on to the next operations.
Actually, I have a question to Heather, but we can follow up later because Heather had a fantastic idea. Okay. So Heather,
we'll meet up, Wolfgang.
Yeah, exactly. So Eddie, please make sure that I get the phone number of Heather. This was about mobile applications in the shop floor, which I like the idea. So we haven't thought about this one.
Yeah, really, very powerful.
Okay,
we will organize that. Thanks, everybody. We enjoy the rest of the day. I'll be online, so do ping me a message in the community. I'll come back to you, everybody. But appreciate you being here today, and looking forward to the rest of the day. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Please feel free to head to our next session, where we'll be applying a lot of what we discussed in a live workshop. So we're going to end this stream here, but be sure to join the next session, which is featuring Jessica Yen from our customer success team, and she'll be going through a live demonstration with one of our customers. All right, thank you, and have a great day.